Only by living at the edge of death can you understand the indescribable joy of life. Earlier this week, I finished Shogun by James Clavell, the first book in the Asian saga, and I liked it overall, but unfortunately, it did not live up to my personal expectations. This was by far my most anticipated read of the year because I'm a huge fan of the show, and so many people have sung the praises of Shogun. And I really, really wanted this to blow my mind. I wanted this to be like the next The Stand for me. I wanted this to be one of those really long books where it made me want to reread it the second I finished it. And unfortunately, it did not want to do that. I really like this book, but I do have issues with it. So let me talk about my issues, and then I'll talk about the things I do like, because the things I do like outweigh the bad, but it's not my favorite thing I've read. First of all, the length and the pacing. This is a very long book. This is a 1,300-page book. It is over 50 hours on audio, and you feel that word count. You feel that page count. I like long books. One of my favorite books of all time is The Stand, which is another, 1,300-page book. I finished The Count of Monte Cristo earlier this year, gave it 5 stars, one of the best reads I've ever read in my entire life. 1,300-page book. It's like 60 hours on audio. It's crazy long, right? I like long books. I finished The Wheel of Time. I finished Stormlight. I finished Malazan. I'm not turned off by really long books. But Shogun feels too long for its own good. James is obviously focused on really encapsulating the entirety of Japanese culture from the 1600s, and I appreciate that. Like, he really, really focuses on that, and that is one of the greatest strengths of this book. Probably the greatest strength of this book, that I'll talk about later. But there were chapters in here that were like 45 minutes to an hour long, at least on audio. And I felt like I wasn't getting a lot out of those chapters. Like, the plot would progress a little, these characters would have interactions that forwarded their dynamic, it would continue their characterization and their development, but like, there were just times where I was like, it could have been half the length and the same effect would have been achieved. So I think for me that was by far its greatest con. It's just too long. Or maybe it's not even just too long, but what James sometimes chooses to focus on did not personally interest me as a reader. And number two, and this is less of an issue, but the pillowing. The way that James just focuses on sex in this book, it bothered me a little. I don't get bothered by sex in my books. I've read a ton of authors who write sex in their books, but usually those authors do it for a very small amount of time, or they write it in a way that pushes the plot forward, or it makes sense. You know what I mean? But here, James spends so much time focusing on the fact that the Japanese were very sexually liberal, which is cool. Like, that's a cool thing to like mention and talk about. But when you spend more time on that than on things that I care about, I don't know, like, I felt like it was getting in the way of other cool elements about Japan during this time period, at least from my perspective. So that kind of really brought it down for me. Otherwise, it's still a really good book. The characters are really, really good. They are morally ambiguous. They are very real. They don't do anything that I would say is like unrealistic. The motivations for these characters are great. The characterization is great. The way they develop and interact with one another and come to rely on one another or distrust one another is really fantastic to see. And I think that is where the page count really, really counts. And that is actually one of the benefits of a book this long, is that you really get to see these characters start at one point and end at another that is very, very different. And that is one of the things where I know I just complained about the length, but it almost justifies it. It almost justifies it. The setting, the amount that James focuses on here between the cultural differences, because, the perspective is from an Englishman who, first dude from England who's ever visited Japan, and oh boy, is it different, is really, really cool, because, this is the year 1600. This guy's from England. He's a Protestant, and the Protestants during this time, they have a certain way of thinking when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to, just social dynamics in general. And the Japanese are just fundamentally different. They view sex in a different way. They view culture in a different way. They view suicide and murder and death in different ways. And that discussion of those two cultures interacting and mixing with one another and irritating one another and hating one another and loving one another is fascinating to see. It's a fish out of water story, and that is the best part of this, is that cultural focus. And I really, really like that. Also, if you're someone who's like just a fan of history, there's a ton of stuff in here for you. There's commentary on European colonization of Asia and the horrors that it unleashed over there. There's a ton of focus on the daimyos and the different there's certain historical characters Clavel was obviously bringing to life in this that you get to focus on. I love the plot and the general dynamics of introducing firearms in mass to Japan. I thought that was really cool, and I just love I love the way the story goes. I wish it ended a little bit after where it did. I wish it were longer at the end, and maybe you cut out some of the stuff in the middle. But overall, it's a really great reading experience. This is definitely for someone who has an interest in historical fiction. Like, if you're someone who really already likes Japan as a setting and you want a perspective that is like fish out of water and you like really long books, then I think this is going to work for you really, really well. If you like character studies and really like stories that focus on characters and their interactions with one another, Shogun is going to be for you. If you like being immersed in a setting and just sitting in it despite any uncomfortabilities, Shogun is going to be for you. But if you're someone who's really focused on plot and moving it forward, if you're someone who wants, an Asian perspective of Japan during this time, you're not going to get it. This is a total fish out of water story. This is definitely for someone who liked the show and wants to know more, because the show did cut certain stuff, or it forgot to mention certain stuff. Overall, it's still a really good book. I think I unfortunately just hyped it up for myself way too much, and having seen the show, I had known generally what was going to happen and where certain character arcs were going to lead. So I would recommend reading the book before seeing the show. Obviously, if you've seen the show, that's not like me saying, hey, don't read it, but you might get more out of it if you haven't seen it already and you are interested in reading it. I'd give it like a 8.7 out of 10 overall. Great book, but not my favorite of the year. Good, just I wish I liked it more.